Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. We're now continuing my series of ranking every Disney animation movie, all 62. I've already gone down all the way to 51. So in this video, we're going to cover my 50th through 46th pick, ranking these Disney movies. Still, these are the movies that I'm not a fan of. And even some of these are beloved classics. I'm afraid even some of the old beloved classics I'm still not a big fan of. But we'll get that here on Jason the Old Millennial. Hello everybody, hope everybody's doing well on this Sunday afternoon. It's funny, I just got done on Adam's What the Gym channel. Me, Adam, and Jacob, we were discussing Mary Poppins on that channel. Definitely check that out on Adam's channel. We had a good discussion of our love for Mary Poppins, which is having its 60th anniversary this year, which is absolutely incredible. So I'm kind of in the mood to talk more Disney, so that's why I decided might as well do more ranking my Disney movies here. So yeah, we're going to start with number 50 on the list. So number 50, we got the last of kind of the package films. It's my favorite of the package films, actually, and it's The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, which is a pretty cool title overall. It's, as you tell from the title, it's two different stories. First one, or second one maybe, is Sleepy Hollow, which is the more popular of the two, I'd say. I believe the first story is, I forget what it's called. It's Mr. Toad is the character in the story. I forgot to even look what the title was, because to be honest, the first story with Mr. Toad, I've never really seen before until, more recently when I watched this movie. And I don't really care for this story personally. It's by far the weaker of the two stories. And it follows, it's from like a book or something, like a kid's book or whatever. Follows this Mr. Toad as he borrows money, I think, and buys a car, and he's driving a car. But then he kind of gets swindled and he's like a fugitive. They have to arrest him and put him in jail, but then he escapes and they're after him. And all this, from what I'm trying to remember on top of my mind, because again, I've only seen that short maybe one time. It's not one I've ever grew up on, or again, to me, it's not one of the classic shorts. So it's a weird one to put together. But again, this was in the must have been made in the 40s period, like late 40s maybe, or mid 40s, during that package film period, the wartime Disney films, where they didn't have enough staff or enough time to put together actual full-length feature films, and just had to put these shorts together and put it out and say, all right, here's a film with some shorts. Again, not a big fan of this style, just because it seems, again, it's not an overall story, like my favorite are. So that's why it's always going to be ranked towards the bottom. Still, it's my favorite actually out of the group, and that's because of the Sleepy Hollow short is actually really good. I really actually quite enjoy this. Part of me is I wish they could have somehow figured out a way to make the Sleepy Hollow story a full-length feature film. I think that would have been great, even though it's really kind of a scary, one maybe the scariest animation movies that they made, to be honest. Animated shorts, based off of a story that's kind of scary. Anyways, it's very spooky in a sense. Very good story for Halloween time, I would say. It's a good one to watch around Halloween. But yeah, I really love the short. I think it's a great one. I like that we got Bing Crosby narrating and singing the songs. I like Bing Crosby. I'm actually fairly fan of his voice and everything, and some of his movies actually have a huge Bing Crosby record collection. I have like 48 Bing Crosby vinyls sitting over right over there. Anyways, so yeah, I like hearing Bing Crosby here telling the story. Ichabod, the new school teacher who likes this one girl who's kind of using him, and there's the big strong guy that is jealous, who's kind of a precursor to Gaston from if you've seen Beauty and the Beast. This guy is basically Gaston, except we don't really see him as a big jerk like Gaston. But then the great scene is when they're at a party and Gaston, the I forget what his name is, but the kind of the jealous big strong jealous guy tells Ichabod, he sings the song of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, and that's a great scene. And then we get Ichabod and his horse going home and then being attacked by the Headless Horseman. It's a really great sequence. Especially love he's being chased around this tree, and then I think somehow they get switched around where he ends up chasing the Sleepy Hollow, I believe, or something like that, and he gets caught in the tree. And I remember the kid, it was a really frightening scene because the Headless Horseman he has like this fire head or whatever, pumpkin head, I think, and his horse is black, and the horse was scary, and he has this really scary laugh, hollow. In fact, I think at one point Ichabod looks down the Headless Horseman's down his cloak to see if there's anything there. And then it ends with him going across the bridge, and then the Headless Horseman throws like his head at him. And then we kind of get this ambiguous ending of like, whatever happened to Ichabod? All we know is he left town and he never came back. And it was always kind of this like, oh, did the Headless Horseman get him at the end? Or did he just run away and make a life somewhere else? Which I like to think he got away and made life somewhere else. It was also, to me, always ambiguous whether the Headless Horseman was real, or was that the strong, jealous guy dressed up as the Headless Horseman to scare him off? Because then the guy ends up marrying the girl that Ichabod was kind of courting anyways, and had a kind of happy story there. But yeah, overall, I really like that short. Didn't care for the first short with Mr. Toad. So because of that, it's here at number 50. Still not like one that I go back to as much. Number 49, this was one that came out in the 2000s, and definitely was like the low point, I think, in Disney. After the 90s was such a high point. So many classic movies, some of the great musical animated movies we ever gotten. And then they kind of went to this in 2000s, early 2000s especially, they went to this really period where they're just not making very good movies. And this is, to me, maybe the worst of them, and that is Home on the Range, which is one I always forget that even exists. And you might be watching this going, what is Home on the Range? Because it did not do very well. It's definitely, I think, it's one that's criticized pretty heavily. It's one that people don't really talk about much. It's kind of forgotten because it's about these cows, and the homestead is going to be foreclosed or something like that. So the cows try to go save the homestead, the farm. And anyways, and they come across this, the villain who is kidnapping the cows, if I remember right. And he does it by yodeling, which is so odd. He sings like this yodeling song, and somehow it like hypnotizes the cows, so they follow him. And so he's kidnapping all these cows, and then he's trying to buy all this land. It's that kind of story. And the main thing is it's just not very funny. The characters aren't that great. There's a horse played by Cuba Gooding Jr., I believe, which is that character is probably the best character in the movie. He's fine. The villain's not a very good villain, very forgettable villain. Like I said, just the yodeling villain that kidnaps cows. Not great. And to me, the worst part of the movie is the main character. The main cow is voiced by Roseanne, the famous comedian actress that had a TV show, Roseanne. And her voice is so grating on the ears. She's always just had one of the worst voices. And her as the main character is like, oh, I hated all her scenes. And that's what really brings us down to number 49 for me. It's just, I really did not like her voice acting. And her overall character was just annoying. And yeah, again, it just didn't have a lot of memorable scenes in it or great characters or great music. The ending is okay, you know, has a good happy ending to it, and there's some action at the end that's not bad, but for the most part of the movie, it's just one of the most forgettable movies ever made. So it's here at number 49, Home on the Range. Number 48, I know people aren't gonna like me putting this here. It's a beloved classic. It's part of their, you know, the first 5 movies that they made, the golden period, and that is Pinocchio, which I believe is like the second movie they made after Snow White. Yeah, Pinocchio. I know people love Pinocchio. I know my friend Jacob is like, Pinocchio is probably in his top 5 favorite animated movies of all time, and he's gonna be not gonna, but he knows I don't like this movie as much. Um, yeah, it's a movie I actually enjoyed as a kid. I think it's definitely got some dark moments, really dark moments actually, and that's probably part of why I don't like this movie so much. Even going back and watching it, it's to me a little slow moving. It's a little boring at times. Um, and I think the thing I hate the most about the movie is that it has like 3 villain characters, and none of them get their justice. And I absolutely hate that because to me, like that's just movie 101. When you write a movie script, you have a villain that you hate, but then they get, you know, something bad happens to them. The hero overcomes, and you know, the villain gets, you know, arrested or killed or whatever, you know, something bad happens to the villain. But you have Stromboli, I believe it is, who uh, is the puppeteer who Pinocchio, he gets kind of tricked into going and working for his puppet show because he can talk and sing and dance without any strings. You know, he has a whole "I got no strings to hold me down," which is a pretty good song. But then he tries to leave, and Stromboli puts him in a cage, and then says like, "I'm like, basically like you're like I'm kidnapping you. You're like my prisoner, and then when I'm done with you, I'm gonna make you firewood." Which is, wow, that is dark. Like he's gonna literally use Pinocchio as firewood if, you know, whenever he doesn't need him, and it's super sad. Pinocchio is like, you know, man, he's kidnapped. He's never gonna see his father again. But then he gets, anyways, but nothing ever, that's the last time you see of Stromboli. You never see anything bad happen to him. I hate that. I'm like, something bad needs to happen to Stromboli. That's such an evil character. Then you got like the fox and I don't know what, I forget their names now. The 2 like, hustle characters who always always take advantage of Pinocchio, trick him, you know, to go into Stromboli, and then they trick him to go into Pleasure Island, which is another, you know, horrible scene. Those 2, nothing ever happens to those 2 characters. Not like something bad needs to happen to them. They're kind of evil. They're you know, tricking Pinocchio into bad things. Who's, you know, young and naive, you know, and doesn't know any better, doesn't understand the evil of the world and all that. I forget their names, but anyways, like nothing bad happens to him. And then you got the stagecoach driver who drives all the kids to Pleasure Island and then turns them into donkeys and then uses them as slave labor. and and as they still have their kid mind in their body as a donkey, and oh man, I absolutely hate that scene. That scene just haunts me as a kid. Still haunts me, that scene where the one kid turns into a donkey. Man, that is such a haunting scene. I still hate it watching it today, and it still disturbs me beyond belief. And probably why I don't like this movie is I just hate the whole Pleasure Island scene, whatever, and what happens to those kids. And we never see those kids get turned back into kids, from donkeys to kids. We never see them get rescued. Like, what was the whole point in that? They get turned into donkeys, and now they're donkeys for the rest of their lives, and they're going to be used as slave labor by this stagecoach guy who's like the devil. He even looks like the devil in one scene. Nothing ever happens to the stagecoach guy. He's free to enslave these kids. Yeah, so I don't know. The more I think about it, the more mad I'm getting. I'm getting kind of angry just thinking about this movie. It's so terrible. The only thing that makes me put it up at 48, I guess, is that I love Jimmy Cricket. That's one of the best Disney characters. Love him. He's the best part of the movie by far. his whole scene where he comes into Geppetto's shop and interacts with all the different clocks is great. And he, of course, sings such a great iconic song, when you wish upon a star. Great scene, him singing Wish Upon a Star, and he kind of narrates the movie in a bit. And it's a fun character. Definitely the best part. And the music is pretty good as well. But yeah, Pinocchio at 48. 47, another kind of classic movie, but I've never been a big fan of, and that is Alice in Wonderland, based off of this famous stories by, I think Carol is the name of the author. Pretty fantastical, very psychedelic kind of imagery in here. Alice falling asleep, and then imagine yourself in this kind of crazy alternative world, the Wonderland, and come across all these crazy characters like the Cheshire Cat, who disappears, and you get like the Mad Hatter and the whole Mad Hatter tea scene, which is iconic, which is great. Mad Hatter is probably my favorite character in the movie. I do enjoy the Mad Hatter, voiced by Edwin. Edwin's so great. Mad Hatter, man, what a great character. Even was a villain in the Batman animated series. Funny enough, there's a character named the Mad Hatter in that. But anyways, iconic character, iconic scene for sure. But it's a weird movie. And I don't know, it's just the plot I don't really care for. She's just kind of stuck in this Wonderland, and it's kind of boring at parts to me. And she comes across all these different stories, and some of the stories I'm not a big fan of. Like there's this whole story about this, I forget what it is, like a seal or something, a walrus, who eats all this guy's kids, which are like these, what do you call them, oysters. Like this guy has like all these oyster kids, and this, like, if I might be totally forgetting this, I forget what animal it is. I think it's like a walrus or something. Like tricks all these kid oyster things and eats them. And I'm like, this is horrible. This is disturbing. I hate that scene so much. But you get the ending with the Queen of Hearts, off with her head. And I mean, as a kid, I thought some of that imagery was kind of cool. All the cards, being the guards and stuff like that, and the queen, in the trial part, and then she gets big at times and small at times, and she's able to escape, and then it turns out she's like been dreaming the whole time. I don't know. I'm just not the biggest fan of it. Doesn't really have much of a plot or a satisfactory ending to it all, in my opinion. But yeah, so it's Alice in Wonderland, number 47. Last movie I'll talk about, another classic, I would say, but never one I've been a big fan of, and that is Sleeping Beauty here at 46. Another one of the great Disney, princesses and stories. It does have an iconic villain, Maleficent. It has a great, design to it for sure. She reminds me a lot of like the evil, the witch and Snow White, kind of that kind of character. Except she does have some magical powers in this one. And I know they made 2 movies called Maleficent with Angelina Jolie, and I've never seen those movies because I think they're trying to make her less evil, which I'm like, no, the character should be evil. That's the whole point. This movie, again, I think it's a little boring. The main, I think, is it Aurora? Is that the main princess? Never been like a big fan of her as a princess. To me, she's kind of the least interesting princess we've had. And then she's like guarded by these 3 fairies with different, who are like pink, green, and blue, I think. And those characters aren't that interesting as side characters. Like I always say, a good Disney movie, you have your interesting hero that you're rooting for, and you have a good villain to root against, is a kind of the blueprint for a good, I think, Disney movie. But you also need a really good, funny side character. That's what my favorite Disney movies are. And to me, the side character are the 3 fairies, and to me, they're like the least interesting, funny characters that we've had in Disney. So I didn't really care for them as Disney. And even the love story is not that great. It's like, I think because they're hiding her away from Maleficent because she put a curse on her. And so she's hiding out like in the middle of nowhere, and she bumps into the prince who's just riding about in the forest, and they sing a song, and then they're in love. It's one of those things like those princess stories where it's like, you don't know this person, but now you're madly in love with them. So the love story isn't that interesting. The most interesting part of the movie is, of course, at the end when, of course, Sleeping Beauty, the whole story of her getting stabbed by the needle or whatever, and falling asleep, and then the prince has to wake her up, and then Maleficent turns into a dragon, and the prince has to, sword fight this dragon who's breathing fire. Obviously, that's like the best part of the movie and the most interesting, most exciting part, and maybe the most memorable and iconic part of the movie, I would say. Besides that, to me, I always just thought this was, out of all the princess stories, probably the most boring of them, of this classic princess period. Because, like I said, this is the lowest ranked one, I believe, because I haven't talked about all the other classic ones yet. I think I like quite a bit more than this one. So that's why that's here at number 46. So that's my 53-46. Feel free to comment, what do you think about these movies? You love them more than me? Tell me. Anything I appreciate anyway. So, but besides that, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for liking it. Thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate you, and I hope you all have a great Sunday.